If you're looking for homeschool sanity, welcome. I'm Dr. Melanie Wilson, Christian psychologist turned homeschool mom and curriculum author. But I was once so disorganized, I thought I had to quit homeschooling and stop having kids. Now, by the grace of God, I have 6 homeschool graduates. Whether we're discussing parenting, productivity, or practical tips, I pray that this episode is just what you need for happy, healthy homeschooling. Hey, homeschoolers. Homeschooling has changed so much since I started teaching my kids. I wonder what it will look like if and when my kids start homeschooling their children. I wanted to talk with someone who is on the cutting edge of education. I know you'll be interested in what my guest has to say because it can change the way you homeschool now. For over 30 years, Matt Bowman has been reimagining education for the digital age. As a former 6th grade teacher turned tech executive and education entrepreneur, Matt saw firsthand how the traditional education system often fails to meet the unique needs of individual learners. Together with his wife, Amy, Matt founded Open Ed, formerly My Tech High, which has served more than 100,000 student enrollments across multiple states, including many military families worldwide. Their approach focuses on blending personalized learning with technology and entrepreneurship skills, giving students the flexibility to learn in ways that work best for them. Matt holds multiple degrees in education and is an alumnus of Stanford's Executive Business Management program. He lives in the mountains of Utah, where he and Amy enjoy spending time with their 5 married children and 4 grandchildren and counting. Before I share our discussion, I want to thank CTC Math for sponsoring this episode. Matt, thank you so much for joining me here on the Homeschool Sanity Show. I am excited to talk about Open Ed, but before we do that, I would love to have you tell us more about you and your family.
Great to be here with you, Melanie. We really appreciate it. And so I'll start. So my wife and I have 5 children, and as we were raising them, and it's exciting, all 5 are married now, and we have 4 grandkids with 2 on the way. So that's a little bit about me. As I'm a dad first, grandpa second. My grandkids call me Pops. So I
Aw.
like that, and just having a fun time. So as we were raising our children, we realized what all parents realize is that every child is different. They're each unique. And so we concluded that each of them also needed a different education plan. And so we felt overwhelmed by that task of trying to figure out, how do you customize an education plan for 5 different children. And so we just said, let's just try it. So we started figuring out what each of them would want and need and benefit from, and ended up doing a mix of everything: homeschool, hybrid, micro, online, private, you name it. And that was really the foundation for open education, kind of the movement that we saw. Other parents wanted that too. And so we started an organization that partners with school districts to do that on their behalf. So that was really the foundation story of Open Ed.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit more about what Open Ed actually is specifically?
Yeah, so Open Ed is, we contract with public schools, so districts and charters, and then we turn around and provide a personalized education platform to families. Help them design it, help them pick from all the world's best curriculum resources, vet through all that, navigate all that, and include community-based education too. Karate lessons, pianos, music, arts, sports, everything that kids love, and entrepreneurship. That's a key theme of ours, is we love kids starting businesses. There's so much to learn in that category. And so we kind of just help parents design a personalized education plan that's approved by our district partners. So then it's free to families. So they don't have any out-of-pocket costs. We cover all the expenses. pay for their karate lessons or whatever, museum passes, those kinds of things to help them access a personalized education plan that's tailor fit for each child.
Wow. And so where is this available to families?
We're in about 10 states right now, Missouri not being one of them yet. And so we're just slowly finding superintendents and district leaders around the country that have started to see that something's changing in education. As you're well aware, the movement towards just doing something a little different is just picking up so much steam lately. And districts are starting to pay attention to say, hey, we better adapt a little bit of what we're doing and figure out how to serve families that want something different better. And they're
Mhm.
really not equipped to do that. So they contract with an organization like ours to do it for them. And it works out well for the family, for us, and for the district.
Yes. And so you mentioned something about vetting. Can you give me a little bit more information about that? Because I know that trying to decide what curriculum to use, what classes to take, what activities to participate in for your child is probably the hardest part of homeschooling.
It can be very overwhelming. So, yeah, we have a team of experienced teachers, curriculum developers, homeschool parents themselves, many of them that just kind of visit with the family and say, well, hey, what does your child need? And try to help them get a demo access to an account and let them use it for a couple days. And it can go pretty quickly if a child is engaged or not. And I like to share this story that often you'll hear someone say, a kid say, I'm just not good at math.
Mhm.
And I like to say, actually, it's the adult's fault. We haven't found the curriculum that jives with your brain yet. It's not you, it's us. So let us help try 1,000 different versions of math curriculum to try to find the one that fits for you. And once it clicks, the child says, oh, I can do that. It just wasn't in their language before. And so being able to figure that out is really exciting.
That is I love the way that you described that. I would just hope that you wouldn't have to go through 1,000 1,000, and I don't think you would,
We
but
ho
I
we
do
hope
love
we
it.
don't. We hope we don't, but I
Yeah,
say that to say for a child, we would. Like,
right.
we will
You
keep
would do it.
going. Yeah.
You are that committed, and, I know many, many homeschooling parents who do have that kind of commitment to their child. I like to think that I had that kind of commitment, to my kids, but I love that you are coming alongside families to make the process faster and smoother and less frustrating.
Yes, and I'll also add, we are in only 10 states, but we did launch this fall because of parent demand, a private academy. And so, a very affordable but personalized online private academy that's available to anyone across the country. And I think we're looking at Missouri to be a place that we want to really launch that, as there aren't that many public school choice options available there yet. And a private academy could be very well received there. It's like $2,900 a year. So very low cost and full of rich resources and support and connectedness with student clubs and virtual field trips and all those things that just kind of add on to that experience for families.
Mm. Very, very exciting. Well, thank you for explaining that. I wanted to shift gears a little bit because I want to talk with you about all things education. That's really your expertise is really advancing the educational model to line up with the future, with all of the resources that we now have available to us that simply weren't there when I started homeschooling my kids. So let's first talk about standardized testing. When I started homeschooling my kids in my area, we had a homeschool group, a co-op. It's not really a co-op, it's more like a support group, I should call it that. A support group that offered standardized testing every year to homeschoolers who wanted to participate in that. and I made the decision to have my kids do standardized testing around the 6th grade so that anything that I identified where any areas where I felt like they were struggling, then I would have those middle school years to address those areas before they started high school. That is the approach that I chose to use. But you have said that the standardized testing model itself is broken. Can you talk more about that?
Sure, and we could spend a whole day on this topic, Melanie, so I'll keep it short. But in a nutshell, you know, assessments are valuable. Like there's a role for assessments in life. I have no objection to being assessed and identifying the needs that children have or adults have or whatever, right? So assessment is not the bad thing. What's broken is how standardized testing is used in the system. It's just not used to be an assessment to help a teacher help a child or a parent help a child. It's used for a lot of political reasons that really make it unusable and really untrustworthy. Like it doesn't even make sense on how our test scores are used, how they're delivered. I think I was chatting with a test maker, and they said based on the standards that a state publishes, it would require a 10 to 15-hour test to actually do a statistically valid
Mhm,
test. And nobody will do that. And so we have to whittle it down to a 2 to 4 hour test, still way too long. And
mhm,
so even on face value, it's not all that uh, telling, right? And so then you layer on the fact that I say in my book, actually standardized testing is testing more of what the child is learning outside of school than inside of school. And by what I mean by that is that you can map, for the most part, standardized test scores to socioeconomic value. And so what that means is that kids who are gaining education outside of the school, again, after school clubs, karate lessons, field trips, travel,
mhm,
you name it, all those
mhm,
things are aiding that child more so than what is happening inside the school. And so if you layer on that and realize that we're standardized tests or testing what kids are accessing beyond the classroom, it makes it even more unequal and uninformative. And so just that whole model, I just think is ridiculous. Teachers don't like it. They are held to a standard on based on a random set of kids they get from who knows where they came from. And teachers don't like being test preppers. I was a school teacher. We want to inspire kids to think creatively and have that light bulb moment. Test prep does not do that. And
mhm,
so again, I love your point that it's parents should be able to opt in if they
mhm,
want that assessment model. They should be able to opt out if they think it's not the right fit for their child. And teachers and districts should be able to say that's not helping us. We want to do something different. So that's in a nutshell what I'd say about that topic.
Okay. Well, I was very interested in the fact that you talk about learning sprints instead of having rigid schedules. Can you tell me more about that?
Love the learning sprint model. And it's really a good step for any parent who wants to just dip their toe in the water of open education. Is you don't have to change everything overnight. In fact, don't. It can be too overwhelming. But a little baby step is to create a 2 week learning sprint. And we call it a learner driven sprint. And it can be as simple as this sentence. Invite your child to learn about something they're interested in, and in 2 weeks tell you about it.
Mm,
That's it.
that's it.
So start as basic as that. Don't overcomplicate it. And as your child starts to learn stuff and you start to see what they're interested in learning, you can feed them some resources. Hey, I found a book at the library on this topic. Or, hey, did you see this podcast? Or, whatever. You
Mhm,
can start to feed them resources but, be cautious not to overwhelm them because sometimes the parent takes over the sprint. You don't want to do that. So you want the child just to feel like they have access to resources where they can learn about dinosaurs or space or dolphins or whatever they decide they want to learn about for 2 weeks. And then what's even more fun is inviting them to, if you repeat it often, have them do some variety of their return reports. It
Hmm.
could be a traditional science fair, threefold, whatever. It could be a PowerPoint slide. It could be then, they create a board game or they create
True.
a little video or they create a podcast series on that topic, of 30 seconds each or, YouTube videos or whatever they come up with, but have them build a physical tower that represents something in their learning sprint or a Minecraft model inside a whatever they like and
Mm-hmm.
enjoy. Have it be partly learning and then demonstrating your learning is also a whole bunch of learning that happens. You're learning Adobe Creative Suites. You're learning, video editing or Word document editing to print little cards for your board games or whatever. And so there's a whole lot of learning that happens both in the topic and in the presentation of your knowledge.
Absolutely. And, as you were mentioning the different ways that they can demonstrate their learning, I was thinking about the fact that once our kids are adults, that is exactly what they're going to do in their personal lives or their work lives, even. They're going to gravitate to the things that they enjoy. And so we might as well allow them to start doing that in their education, their elementary years, and even their high school years, to use the preferred learning expression modality that they enjoy. I mean, it might even turn into a future career, but if it doesn't, that's okay too.
Yeah, for
Hobbies
sure.
are
And
wonderful.
no, I love that idea that we sometimes treat the K-12 experience as something so different from
Mhm.
adulthood. And we then are shocked that our kids aren't ready for adulthood, right? Because
Mhm.
we treat them in a very prescribed for obedience and compliance mode, and they have no choice, autonomy to do anything. And then we throw them at 18 into the world and say, okay, now go navigate your own choices. And it's
Mm.
like, well, I've never had choice before. What do I do with choice? And so the
Mhm.
more we can introduce what we call in a book, give your child a voice as early as you can, depending on the child's, maturity and development. That could be more younger than you think.
Mhm.
As children who start practicing having a voice in their decisions of education in particular, and then extend that to beyond the other things of their schedule or their interests or whatever, they can practice having choice. So when they're older, they know how to do that.
Mhm. I love it, I love it. It is really exciting to see your kids take their gifts and then the things that they're learning, and incorporate it all together into something maybe even completely new that inspires you. I've certainly had my kids inspire me with all the things that they are learning and are into. So that is a great path forward, I think, for us as
Yeah.
parents.
And then I'll add, I mentioned entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
and that can take lots of varieties, but we say basically start with find a problem in your home or neighborhood that you can solve. And to us, that's the category of entrepreneurship, whether it's for profit or nonprofit or whatever, it doesn't matter.
Mhm. Mhm.
Step up as a leader, practice some leadership skills to go find a problem, solve a problem with value, and see what that experience is like. And as you do that, that'll open up doors that you've never had open before because you start to see the world in a different way. It's less depressing in many ways because you can say, oh, that's a problem. I bet if we spend an hour on it, we could solve it,
Mhm.
or at least start to solve it. And so that gives some confidence to this young generation to say, it's not all doom and gloom. We can actually step up and make an impact for good. And,
Yeah.
I'd say don't worry about the world problems and maybe even ignore the national problems for now.
Mhm.
Those can get a little bit hairy and overwhelming. Let the adults still deal with that. But kids, solve community challenges in city, state, your local area that you can really make an impact, and that's what we want society to do is return to your communities and make it the best place you can live and not worry about all this other chaos and stress that's happening around the world.
Such great advice. I mean, I think adults could take that advice too.
I agree. I try to apply it in my life too.
Mhm. I love it. Okay, so I know that you have served military families and that you have learned a lot about how to serve all different types of families as a result. Can you talk with us about that?
Yes, I'd love to talk about the military experience we've had. So, as I've learned over these years, so this is our 17th year in open ed, and we've seen every version of everything you can think of, including military families. And as I've researched that more, I've found that even the US military says the number one inhibitor to enrolling someone into a military career is they're worried about the disruptive nature of their child's education being deployed, on a whim or whatever. And so I realize that education is a major stress for military families, and it's a obstacle to even join the military, and once you're in, it's a constant concern. And the reason being is that any disruption in a child's education can set them back multiple school years.
Mhm.
And, if they're having 12 different things in 12 years, it's really going to impact their education. And so what we found in the states that we operate, military families, once they've established their residency in that state, can stay enrolled in our program even if they go elsewhere or
Brilliant.
overseas. And so we had a family, for example, that was in our program, and their the 15-year-old daughter, I remember the story. Her dad was deployed to South Korea, and she said, "I'm not going. I love my education with open ed so much." And she was working on an early college program through our platform. She said, "I'm loving it. If I need to leave this experience, I'm not going with you. I'm gonna find someone else to live with." And the mom and dad were like, "Oh, well, hey, Matt, can we take her with us to South Korea? And can she do exactly what she's doing
Mhm.
uh, today there?" And I checked into it and said, "Absolutely." And she was thrilled. So the whole family got to stay together. She had zero disruption to her education. She woke up and did the same thing in South Korea as she was doing in her home state. And that allows for this idea that military children can have continuity and not be disrupted, and that can
Mhm.
really help the whole family be happy and successful.
Yes. So it doesn't matter if you're not a military family, if you have to move for family reasons or a job change, then you can keep your education continuity.
Yeah.
That's
Yep. No,
wonderful.
that's an important thing as kids
Yeah.
get older. They want some continuity in what they're doing, but it applies for young kids as well. So yes.
Yes. Okay. So, how do you see education evolving in the next 10 years? And I would say specifically as it applies to homeschoolers.
So right now, the biggest trend that I'm watching out there is the growth of what people are calling micro schools.
Hmm.
So it's kind of a homeschool co-op plus, right? So it's the idea that someone is stepping forward and saying, "I'm going to organize this entity called a micro school, and I'm gonna figure out what the parents and kids want." And so that idea of just making it 10 or 12 kids in a setting, multi-age group setting, and in a barn or someone's house or in a local rental, you pull together and rent out a space together. More and more, I see that happening a lot, and including in rural America. Like often rural districts and advocates for school choice struggle with this idea that there's not much supply in rural America. But we are seeing it. We're seeing families start with 10 or 12 kids and now have 50 kids in a rural micro school because there's so much demand there. So what I would
Hmm.
say is any listeners or any parents who want to kind of dip their toe in entrepreneurship and education, try to figure out if a micro school model is in your future and create one, spin one up. And what's funny too is I was in Wichita, Kansas not too long ago, and at a micro school incubator.
Hmm.
So it's like a building that has shared space for labs and podcast studio and videos and computers and printers and really cool kind of shared space. And then these kind of pods around the edges that micro schoolers can rent out. And then they can share the shared space in between. And uh, one of those tenants was a public school magnet program. So a public school was renting a space from a micro school incubator. And I was like, kudos to Wichita Public Schools because they are seeing that there is something here and is
Mhm.
worth districts looking into. In Indiana, there's a superintendent that started a entire network of micro schools all under the public school system
Hmm.
and
Wow.
advocating for just personalized education at a local level and get rid of the massive
Um,
standardizedness of schooling. And it draws homeschoolers back who
mhm.
says, yes, that's the language I'm talking about.
Mhm.
Multi-age group, personalized based on learner driven interests,
Mm.
manageable, maybe flexible. So I can go 1 day a week or 5 days a week. Like, what is it, what is it that the parent and child need? And being able to create a flexible, personalized model is what I hope all schools look like in the future.
Yes, I mean, that is really interesting. I knew about micro schools, but I did not know about, this big trend with, using a shared space like that. Our local high school just did a very expensive, I'm gonna say the amount of money wrong, so I won't mention it,
Not
but
a lot.
the school it's just so impressive. They have a television studio in there. You name it, they have the facility to help kids learn and experience what they are interested in those skills that they can develop. And I love that, but it doesn't help homeschooling families in our area. How much more incredible would it have been if it was a place where other people, other families, faith-based schools or students who had an interest in using those facilities, um, you know, renting them, as you're saying. I love that concept, and I am hopeful to see more of that in the future.
Yes. And I would actually say it might be worth organizing a large group of families, going to the board meeting and saying, hey, can we split enroll? And just take one class from your high school. You'll get the funding. They'll get the funding for the one class. So it should be an actual net gain for them. And we just want to come on Thursday afternoons and use your space
Right.
and see if they're open to it. Like
Yeah.
more and more districts are realizing we've got to change a little bit of our all or nothing approach. That's kind of what open education title comes from is stop forcing us into buckets and let us
Mhm.
tap into all of them, including public education. And that's where there's so many assets and resources available. We just need to be able to bridge the two worlds and more and more are doing that. So there is a possibility. I'd say go see if you can just call it a part-time enrollment model and not have to be all or nothing.
Right, right. I love that, and I was kinda smiling as you were talking because I was remembering when my oldest, who is a very independent, strong-willed guy, when he was in high school in our homeschool, he was really interested in playing tennis with the public school, and without telling me, he called and talked to the coach of
Nice.
the tennis team there at the high school and was asking all about, well, what would it be, what would be required in
Yeah,
order
what's the
for me to
minimum
play
enrollment?
there?
Yeah.
I said, "Okay, wow." I kind of
Well,
would have liked
kudos.
to have
Kudos
known.
to you that you train them up to be an independent, self-directed learner.
Absolutely, and you know what? No, there was no harm in that, but at
So
the
tell me what
time,
happened.
well, what he was told is that he would pretty much had to be enrolled full time. Now, this was quite a while ago.
Right.
So things are actually different here now. So I think it would have been, I think it would be okay if he was a homeschooler and now wanted to play on the tennis team there.
Yeah,
Um,
most states have that allowance. If
uh-huh.
you try out for your boundary district and you're a homeschool kid, you should be eligible for extracurricular activities. So,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
if not, gather groups together and go change that law. Like it's possible to make difference,
Yeah.
because that's a important, or at least change the policy of the district, right?
Yes.
The board has more power than most people think. And you can say, hey, this does not make sense. We want to have, enrolled one class or zero and still participate. So
Right.
lots of opportunities to make change.
I love your boldness with this. I really, really do. I appreciate it so much. Okay, so I now want to know, how can our listeners get your book? It's excellent. I think you will be inspired by reading it. And so tell us where they can get it and also how they can connect with you online if you are on any social media platforms.
Yeah, the best place is opened.co/book. So that's our company's name is opened.co, and our website is, and then you can find /book is where we have a free download to help you get started. Links to the Amazon page is available in Audible and audiobook as well, and Kindle, and all those versions are out there. So get the book and let it just be your jump start to figuring out your next step. That's what we say, is just start somewhere, and you can really make a difference, and you can do it in a very short period of time. And then connecting just on that site has all of our social media handles of, where you can follow Open Ed. And we have a great newsletter that comes out. We have a daily newsletter that's helping parents around the country just take baby steps every day. So daily newsletter, weekly podcast that we host as well, and lots of articles and resources. You'll more than you'll ever be able to consume in a day. So
I believe you. I believe you. And I'm going to add those links to the show notes page for this episode. Thank you so much for this interview. It was really interesting for me to talk with you, so I know our listeners are going to love it. I know I could talk with you a very long time
yep.
about this topic because I'm so passionate about education, but thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. Great to be here.
To find links to CTC Math and Math's resources, visit the show notes page at homeschoolsanity.com/future. Have a happy homeschool week. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. I hope something you heard was encouraging. If you have a personal question to follow up, don't hesitate to message me. I'm at Homeschool Sanity on social media. Be sure to check my free resource page at homeschoolsanity.com/resource and find sanity-saving curriculum at funtolearnbooks.com. This has been a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network.